Mr. Gundele,
Yes, sir.
how many years ago have we been in the same forum like this?
Yeah, so that must have been last year, I think.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
welcome everyone to today's session, the day one of the webinar, the 3-day webinar titled Agribusiness, the Need for Patient Capital. It's a webinar that started the phase one, I should say, a few weeks back, and there was a lot of interest. And this webinar is held by the African Farmers Stories in conjunction with Ajike People Support Center, the brainchild of Her Excellency, the First Lady of Kwara State, Nigeria, Dr. Mrs. Olufolake Abdurazak. We are going to have a fun-filled 3 days, and this is just the beginning, which is the day one. We are having a discussion today on the topic portfolio investment as an alternative to crowdfunding. It's going to be, we're going to have two speakers. The first speaker will be Mr. Richard Ogundele, the CEO of JMSF Agribusiness Nigeria, well-known speaker and an expert on this subject. Richard always keeps everybody on their toes with this presentation. The second speaker for today will be Mr. Bolaji Akimbo, who is the Vice Chair of Vorian Borelli. He's also here to make his presentation. Gentlemen, you're welcome to today's session. We have our moderator also, Mr. Olugbenga Adelano, who is the head of Agribusiness and Export Finance Department of Wema Bank PLC. Together, we will be working to ensure that today's session remains very interesting and we have a lot of learning. We are going to be looking at some ground rules in order to ensure that everyone is served with a whole lot of what the speakers will be having with us today. Everyone will be muted. It's just a 1.5 hour webinar. So let's be focused on lots of learning that we are going to receive. So everyone will be muted so we can all concentrate and there will be no distractions whatsoever. Also, we will have our introductions. It will be good to know who is here. And as such, we would like to have us introduce ourselves in the chat box, just your name and your location. That would be nice. Your name and your location in the chat box. That will help a whole lot. Also, the questions will be posted in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Let's have difference. There will be question and answer session after the presentations, and the questions will be taken from the Q&A box. The chat box is for us to be able to exchange other information, like I said, the introduction that we are going to have. So we are going to enjoy ourselves very much this afternoon. Remember the topic again, portfolio investment as an alternative to crowdfunding. There's been a lot of shaking in that area lately. We need to know more about it. We need to know what else we can do as agribusiness operators and also investors, so we can get the best for one another. Please don't forget, we have two speakers today, Mr. Richard Ogundele and Mr. Bolaji Akimbo, and they will be discussing the topic portfolio investment as an alternative to crowdfunding. My name is Edobong Akpabio. I'm a member of the African Farmers Stories team, and I welcome you all to today's webinar. I will hand over now to Her Excellency, the First Lady of Kwara State, Dr. Mrs. Olufolake Abdurazak. Madam, you have the floor now. And then the moderator, Mr. Gbenga Adelano, will take over. Welcome to today's session.
Thank you very much. And I must say you are doing a fantastic job moderating this. We've started very well, and I can see a lot of people have joined us today. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'd like to recognize your very humble self. I'd like to recognize the CEO, GMSF, Agribusiness Nigeria, Richard Ogundele, the chairman, Vorian Corelli, Bolaji Akimboro, the head of Agribusiness and Effort, Finance Department, Wema Bank PLC, Olugbenga Adelana, other distinguished guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I can see that a lot of people have joined us from very far. I think when I was logging in, I saw some people saying they're from Kenya and all these other places. We're very happy to have you here. And I think this topic will actually help us because we're also looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and making sure that, Africa business, in this instance, agribusiness, we get it to every part of Africa. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be part of the opening session of this agribusiness webinar. Thank you to Africa Farmers Stories for putting this event together. And I commend my own Ajike People Support Center for supporting this laudable initiative. Agribusiness is rapidly growing as one of the key industries in both local and global levels, with the increased global responsiveness to food security and sustainable food production in the face of imminent population growth. According to the World Bank, 77.7% of Nigeria's land is arable and capable of producing key cash crops, including beans, sesame, cashew nuts, cassava, cocoa beans, groundnuts, maize, corn, melon, rice, millet, palm kernels, palm oil, plantains, and rubber, amongst others. Nigeria also has quality manpower to complement the fertile land mass and drive the sector, judging from her teeming population of able-bodied youths. The sector is, however, largely plagued by several limiting factors, such as obsolete farming methodology, lack of access to cheap finance, inadequate storage facilities, defective power supply, poor transportation infrastructure, refrigeration or the lack thereof, amongst others. Nevertheless, a cursory review of the fiscal framework for the sector indicates that the government is keen on developing agribusiness. This is evident in the several incentives, schemes, and policies aimed at jumpstarting the sector and improving the yield from it. I'm sure we're all aware that in Nigeria, we're trying to diversify the economy from oil. And because of this, agribusiness has really become very important in the way that Nigeria is trying to manage its economy. This renewed focus on growing the non-oil sector of the economy by the government has led to the implementation of policies geared towards encouraging farmers and investors. And I'm sure there's so many of such people here today. It is in this regard that I commend the Executive Governor of Kwara State and my dear husband, Malam Abdurrahman Abdurazak, for endearing youths into agribusiness and evolving strategies that promote the interest of farmers irrespective of their settlements. Apart from implementing policies that encourage farming, the Kwara State government equally makes high-yielding seeds and other farm inputs available to farmers in the state. In complementing these efforts, my office and the Ajike People Support Center, which I believe everyone knows is an initiative that I founded to help people, have at different times supported and partnered with women and youth farmers associations with a view to promoting their trade and supporting their cause. Being conscious of the fact that risks exist in agribusiness, the Ajike People Support Center will in December organize a workshop in partnership with Leadway Assurance on how to mitigate losses in agribusiness for selected agribusiness owners in the states. We are also talking to the Bank of Industry and the Ajike People Support Center, hopefully to come together to support farmers and entrepreneurs in the state. Last year, a similar intervention was solicited through the central bank and beneficiaries were true to their repayment plans. So we're looking forward to more partners coming on board to assist us to help those in agribusiness in Kwara State. We are equal. I think everybody may want to read up on what is going on in the country in cocoa renaissance, independence and independence, the sale of cocoa. And because of that, you know, they were able to make so much money from the sale of cocoa. So there's now a cocoa renaissance, and a lot of states have started planting cocoa in very high scales to make sure that we can go back to those days where we were earning quite a lot of money from cocoa production. We're very lucky that in Kwara we have high producing and high yield cocoa, and we're also very lucky that we have a cocoa industry that it does not operate with the bitter taste of cocoa. I'm sure everybody knows that what that means. We try as much as possible to make sure that we do not have large scale unethical practices and large scale modern day slavery and such practices in our cocoa industry. We also have in Kwara a young fine chocolate producer. And now we're very happy that we have fine chocolate in Kwara. And these are the gains of making sure that agribusiness is thriving in the state. The producer sources her raw materials majorly from farmers in the state. And we're very happy that they've diversified, not just from milk chocolate, they have dark chocolate, they have other spectrum of cocoa products which they are now selling. You will agree with me that smallholder farmers simply cannot be the only options to optimally harness the potentials that abound in this industry. Hence the proprietary of this webinar. I think this webinar has come at a fantastic time where even in my own home, I have a little garden at the back of my house, which I've turned into a mini farm as well, where I have all this produce that I use in my kitchen. And I think it's important to try to start encouraging Nigerians at any scale as well, even if it's a small patch of land you have around
Good evening, everyone. I was very much enjoying the First Lady's speech. I think she's having some network issues. We hope she'll be able to come back to us to finish her speech. However, I would like to go into the next session of presentations from our lead speakers on the topic of portfolio investing as an alternative to crowdfunding. Ms. Enobong provided the foundation to this discussion. Patient capital is necessary because of the nature of very nature of agribusiness. It's true. I mean, you need to have a long-term view rather than a short-term view. So today we are looking at an alternative to the much celebrated crowdfunding scheme that started like 5 years ago. There are issues now with this kind of model, and we're beginning to see that it's not really a very sustainable funding model. So we'll be listening to our speakers, Mr. Ogundele and Mr. Bolaji Akinboro, in that order, to tell us what has portfolio investing got to offer differently for especially micro, small, and medium scale agribusinesses in Nigeria. So without much ado, I hand over to the first speaker, Mr. Richard Ogundele, to talk us through on this topic of portfolio investment as an alternative to crowdfunding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, Your Excellency. Can you see the screen, please?
Yes, we can see your screen, sir.
Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. Mr. Bolaji, can you see? Can everyone see? I hope so. Quickly, I would like to thank the First Lady of Kwara State, Her Excellency, for giving us that lovely speech. I hope, like the moderator said, we'll be able to get the rest of it. Without wasting too much time, we all know that agribusiness is the way out for Nigeria, and we just have to ensure that we make the best of it. As a country, we have our challenges, we know that, but there is nothing insurmountable. All we need to do is get more coordinated, and we will be able to get there. So today we'll just be looking at portfolio investments, a patient alternative to crowdfunding in agribusiness development. Crowdfunding, like we all know it to be, is when a pool of funds come together from different walks of life just to ensure that agribusiness operation go on. And for this presentation, we just have 5 areas. Why the emphasis so much on Nigerian agriculture, what drives crowdfunding, and what's the business case around portfolio investment, what are the existing ones already in the market, and what do you need to look out for before you engage. Why is there so much emphasis on Nigerian agriculture? Well, very simple. As of 2019, at least it contributed 25% to the GDP. It's employing about 36% of people in that sector. And we have a population of 0 to 14, which needs to be fed. So there's a whole lot of interest in agriculture in Nigeria. Just for simple definitions, crowdfunding, patient capital, portfolio investment, and then the ADCA principle, like I call it, is a principle that we all need to begin to look at so that we can move from where we are to where we want to get to. We all get the slides, so let's not dwell too much on these definitions. But for patient capital, it's long term. For crowdfunding, it's more short to medium. And for portfolio investment, it involves a whole lot more than just the funds being available. Now, for crowdfunding, what drives crowdfunding? The very important thing is that the banks out there are not smiling. And I'm sure Mr. Benga will know what I'm talking about. They have shareholders' funds, their interest rate is high. And for agriculture in Nigeria, you can't run it on a 2-digit interest rate. So people needed to get more creative, and that's how the concept of crowdfunding came about. So if those who are working 9 to 5 want to make extra money and they're looking for where to put the money, crowdfunding is there. But which sector is it that they can easily put the money and be sure that they get something back? It's the agricultural sector. So one critical driver of crowdfunding is the fact that you can get finance outside the banking system, which is unregulated. Of course, we want to promote food security and the rest of them. Now, the challenges are the fact that you have very unrealistic returns, and the tenure of those returns are what you just cannot fathom. You can't be telling somebody you're paying a 42% return on investment in 6 months, on a crop that you know that can't even give you up to 12% within the same period. So it shows that there is a lack of understanding of the production cycle, the market systems, and everything that has to do with that value chain. But of course, crowdfunding is not a bad idea. It has a benefit of its own. It creates that social entrepreneurship. It's an easy access to finance without stringent banking terms and conditions. And it gives extra income for investors that are able to get a successful crowdfunding system working. Overall, the impact is unrealistic returns, failure of the investors' confidence, like we all have that doubt right now. Any crowdfunding venture that comes out will have to look again. And of course, crowdfunding tries to look at the micro and smallholder farmers together. I put a caveat here below, which says, regardless of these setbacks, crowdfunding is still a very good model if managed properly by trained, qualified, and experienced operators. So let's not be quick to discard crowdfunding. Let's just get it uh, done in a better way than it is being done at the moment. Coming to portfolio investments, what drives portfolio investment? Smallholder farmers are the bulk of the farmers in Nigeria, 70% of them, but the demand of our agricultural needs at the manufacturing end so high, these smallholder farmers are not able to meet this demand. And when we keep doing smallholder farming less than 1 hectare, half hectare, we really cannot become competitive internationally or regionally. So we need to begin to think bigger, wider, out of the box. And that's where large commercial farming comes in. The only way we can get into commercial farming from where we are now is to begin to think portfolio investment. And that's why the need to have a system where infrastructure, logistics, support services, all put together are organized in an agribusiness manner to ensure that returns on these investments come into play. These are the major drivers of portfolio investments. It involves a whole lot, but the challenge is here. It's a medium to long-term investment, and Nigerians are not known to be that patient. So they need to be oriented towards a medium to longer term investment of their capitals, which they put into different ventures. It's more complex to manage. It involves proper financial structuring. It involves a lot of management and the rest of them, and the personnel must be really top notch. Of course, the return on investment has to be very realistic. Nigerians like quick fix, short time, huge returns. But in agribusiness, in agriculture, it's back-breaking. It's a lot of mental work. It's 90% science, 10% work. If you don't understand it, you start failing from the beginning. So what are the benefits of portfolio investment? It ensures that the value chains get integrated from start to finish, end to end. And that way things are more controlled, organized, coordinated, and the assurance of the quality you get out of it is better guaranteed. It's safer, it's more secure, and of course you have a better cash flow and financial management. The overall impact, like we keep saying, we want to create jobs. Jobs get created when things get integrated like this. The risk of failure is reduced, the return on investment is better, and the supply chain management is more efficient. And ultimately, you have a more sustainable agribusiness management. How does this portfolio investment work? What kind of models we have? You can have a model that is suitable for the cooperatives, which we have in the anchor borrower programs and all the other buyback arrangements on ground. And here you're going to be talking about providing extension, support services, access to market, and the likes of them. But for real portfolio investments, which we are looking at portfolio, we need to talk about large commercial farm estates. And these are now fully integrated. So everything from land, equipment, personnel, technology must be in place. And the minimum tenure for these kind of investments cannot be less than 36 months because there's a whole lot of work to be done. On this other side of the cooperatives, 3 to 9 months looks interesting. And this is where we need to really set that difference between portfolio investment and the general crowdfunding that we are seeing. Why is the crowdfunding having a challenge? Most times the crowdfunding people operate at the same time that the general market operates. So you don't have that competitive edge. But for a portfolio investment, it's a mixture of other things that you are not even bothered about. So if you have more than one commodity or crop in a basket, it means you're hedging yourself and you can make money across board. Now, what portfolio investments exist out there at the moment? When you talk about looking at smallholder farmers being organized, aggregated, and then organized end to end, you have AFEX commodities out there already doing that. And that's why I will always advise anybody who is new in agribusiness, you want to trade in agri commodities, just get on the COMEX, afexnigeria.com, and begin to learn the ropes from there. We also have another portfolio investment activity going on in Ogun State. This one has to do with vegetables and herbs, run by Upepsia Place. It's a combination of large greenhouses, and they are producing a whole lot of vegetables and herbs. You can see some pictures of what they're already doing there. It's working, and I must tell you that yours truly is involved in these ventures. In the coming year, there are some prospects being looked at, about 5 of them. We'll get them in the slides when they are shared. And Your Excellency, Kwara State is part of the states in focus for this large-scale portfolio investment in terms of business investments. We're looking at fruits and vegetables, paddy rice, commercial fodder, soya bean, and tomatoes in greenhouse. Now, before you engage in portfolio investment, you need to be sure that the operator has capacity. What's the proven track record? Has he or she done that before? The problem with the crowdfunding team out there is most of them are just emergency business operators. They just look at it, I'm idle, I've got some funds, I have a little brain, I jump in and they get it, but they don't understand the value chain and they get their fingers burnt. Now, if you're going to run a portfolio investment, you need to have integrated logistics assets. You can't have farm without machines. You can't have farm and machines without storage in case you produce things that don't need to go to the market. All of these things are the skin in the game. And then the tenure of investment for a portfolio investment, it cannot be less than 36 months for any meaningful work to be done. For the crowdfunding, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, it looks fair. But still, the timing of going to the market is important. And of course, the markets, are you sure they have a ready-made guaranteed market? For the 2 examples I shared here, the markets are stable, they're working, and just demand and supply forces that you need to look out for. And finally, insurance is important. You need to be sure that there's an insurance policy that is taken out in your name as the investor that you're going to sign. Insurance only works with pure risk, not speculative risk, as we have been told. It means even if you put in 3 million somewhere, until they produce the seedlings that will be transplanted into the open field eventually or within the greenhouse, you don't have an asset to be insured yet. So these are things that we need to take care of. And like I said here, if we must transit from smallholder farms to large commercial farming, then portfolio investment is the way forward. And I think this is just the ADCA principle that tells us that right now there's so much noise about crowdfunding failing. So we are now aware and it is triggered by failure. We need to begin to look at change. How do we drive that change? So that has to be that desire, and the desire is here already. But most importantly, knowledge, information is important. Without good knowledge, you can't get it done. And at the end of the day, we hope that with the few tips we've shared here, people will begin to ask more questions to know more so that they get to do it right. Time is short, 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogundele. As usual, you've done justice to this topic. Our Excellency is back with us. I would like to give her some time to finish our very wonderful speech. You're most welcome back, Ma. We really appreciate your passion and your focus on empowering women and youth in Kwara State. And we were really enjoying your speech. We'd like to have you back. I'm also a graduate of University of Ilorin, so I'm happy that we have someone there who is seen to helping the people we left behind back then in Kwara. Thank you very much, Ma. You have the floor, Ma.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. It was very interesting to listen to the last speaker. And now that I know that you are a University of Ilorin alumni, you must come and visit me, and let's see what we can continue to do in this space to, continue these conversations. So all I was just saying at the time when I was when I went off is just that smallholder farmers cannot be the only options to optimally harness the potentials that are bound in this industry. And I hope that we would be able to open it to all agribusiness owners so that they know about new trends in conducting their business. And then while we will continue to encourage and support smallholder farmers, it is imperative to note that access to long-term, low-interest margin facilities should be made available to the agribusiness space, as this will drive industrialization in the sector. I'm sure you agree with me that we need factories. I mean, somebody came with a very good idea to me recently about greenhouses and, trying to get acres of land for greenhouses. And I think, we need to think about that, because for now, things like flowers, I'm sure we have to plant flowers sort of in the north central of Nigeria. Sometimes they go all the way to Europe before they come back to Nigeria, and then we start selling these flowers for all the parties and all the beautiful spaces that we enjoy. That cannot continue. We need to have our factories and our greenhouses in Nigeria. And I think, this is the way to start when we start talking about the agribusiness space in this regard, and then we can move we can move the sector forward. Given the current economic realities, I enjoin participants here today to seize the opportunities this event presents and proactively take advantage therefrom. While we work to maximize our output, I urge agribusiness owners to look carefully at their options and be conscious of turning out ethical produce, because that's another thing I keep doing when I discuss with the farmers, especially the women farmers who come to see me regularly, and the youths and all that. I said we have to be mindful of the kind of pesticides that we use with our produce, and to make sure that we source and make sure that we churn out ethical produce that is safe, that is secure, and that will not lead to any form of problems in our society. I wish you all fruitful deliberations in these 3 days that you will be discussing these matters, and hope that so many options will be brought forward and solutions will be thrown up to better the agribusiness field. So I'd like to conclude here and leave you to continue the discussions thereon. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending this. I'm very happy that you are joining us today, and happy deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency, Ma. We are really proud of you. We are proud to have you. We are happy to have you. Thank you so very much. Okay, so we'll go straight into the next session, which is the discussion on portfolio investing. However, before we proceed further, I'd like to quickly tell our participants that if you want to ask questions, there is a question and answer where you have Q&A icon on the screen that you can post your questions in. Don't post your questions in the general chat box. Post it on the question and answer box, which is showing on the screen. So immediately after the second speaker, we'll be able to take your questions and then get our speakers to respond to them. Thank you very much. Once again, I thank Her Excellency for organizing this and for thinking about the future of Nigeria for the women and the youth. You're welcome, ma'am. Okay, so Mr. Bolaji Akinboro is next. After Mr. Bolaji Akinboro, then we'll begin to take our question and answer. Mr. Bolaji Akinboro, you have the floor, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Benga, and thank you very much, Richard, for that introduction. What I would like to do is to undo my session of this meeting in 2 ways. I've written a 2-page paper for this session, which will be shared afterward, but I would like to talk through it because the time is very, very short. The first place I want to start my portion of the conversation is really by giving a vote of thanks to Her Excellency, who is our host, and the Kwara State government and the African Farmer Stories team for the opportunity to speak at the event. I want to paint a picture for everyone that is participating. And the picture is this. This is a special moment in our nation as a country. We're at a critical point. And we have to take charge of our future, especially in the area of us being able to feed ourselves as much as we can. Because if we can do that, we can actually deliver food to our people cheaper. And essentially, if we deliver food to our people cheaper, we're actually putting more money on their pockets. They will ultimately have more disposable income. And this webinar, it's a very important tool in that process because it helps us to achieve something very important that Richard already mentioned, which is a shift in mindset in the country. I'll be talking today about portfolio investment versus crowdfunding. I mean, what are our choices, and what should we decide as the appropriate mechanism for funding agriculture in our country? And I think that's the core of today's session, which is what's the optimum model for financing a business in agriculture? And I'll be speaking predominantly from the perspective of an entrepreneur in agriculture, or as whose share of his wealth predominantly comes from agriculture. And these are the things that I want to first make as a point. When we think of portfolio investment, and Richard has done a good job of defining all the elements. But for the purpose of somebody that is kicking off an agribusiness, I think there are three ways one thinks about it when you want to finance an agribusiness. I think the simplest form of portfolio investment is really some form of equity from investors. And the investors can be the agripreneur himself. It could be friends and family. It could be well-wishers. And it could be financial institutions who want to invest. And essentially, Richard has already mentioned this, that if you take equity as the option of financing an agribusiness, one needs to be patient. Because there are only two ways you get your money out. Either you get it out because the business is paying dividends slowly over time, or there's an exit. The value of the company goes up and the company is sold, and then your shares are very, very valuable. But the main point is that if the business is financed through equity as the choice of portfolio investing, I mean, nobody should expect a return from in a time period of 3 to 5 years. The second place to finance an agribusiness is borrowing from bank. And the problem with that is that when you borrow, the interest rate can swing anywhere between 18% to 30%. The risk of that is that whether you make money or not, you have to pay the bank. But the good thing is that the banks, because of the various development programs that government of Nigeria has put in place at every level of government in Nigeria, they are supporting agriculture in a very, very special way today. So in a way, financing through long-term debts, through banks, I will call this option, which is long-term low-interest debt, is becoming a viable function, a viable way of financing agribusiness, especially if the sponsors don't want to suffer dilution in their shares. And then the third bit is what Richard has already mentioned, crowdfunding, which is what I call the people's money. Actually, crowdfunding is actually another form of borrowing because essentially one is collecting money from Mr. A and giving it to Mr. B to deploy. But for one to attract Mr. A to give somebody his money rather than put it in the bank, one has to offer higher than normal interest rate. And that's where the problem we are seeing today is coming from. People have been promised interest rates that do not really make sense. So those are the really three options, which is, do we look at equity as our choice of portfolio investing? Do we look at financing from the banks, which are the ones putting off that portfolio? Or do we look at crowdfunding, other people's money to do that? So for me, anytime anybody wants to make that decision to say, I want to do an agribusiness, I think one thing is to be very clear on the opportunity. And that's the second point I want to talk about during this webinar. And one of the things I would like our participants to take away is that agriculture in Nigeria alone is big. Across the whole of Africa, it's even bigger. In Nigeria alone, agriculture is almost a $100 billion segment. It's a quarter of our economy. It is really, really, really huge. And it's quite interesting that up until recent times, nobody took agriculture as serious as they took banking, and they took telecoms, and they took oil. But agriculture is actually, is actually bigger than these sectors. And that's what people don't see. And the reason why people kind of don't see agriculture is related to the history of agriculture. And it's related because people are too familiar with agriculture. Because a lot of times people don't understand that we eat every day, but it doesn't occur to people that what we eat every day is money. If you tell somebody about airtime, people are more concerned about the airtime. They will say, don't finish my airtime. But not often do you hear people say, don't finish my food. You know, that consciousness that food is money, you know, it's not something that people are very conscious of. And it carries over into the fact that they don't see agriculture as a business until recently that is now changing. Secondly is perception. Why people are not seeing agriculture the way it's supposed to be seen, because people just feel like agriculture is a village thing, and thank God it's changing. And this webinar helps to change that. And third is visibility of government. So even though agriculture is big as an opportunity, these three things, can make the opportunity difficult to capture. But these three things have also affected how we think about how we finance agribusinesses. So for me, when we think about financing agribusinesses, we have to think about also the wealth equation. Where exactly do we want to finance, or what exactly do we want to finance? You know, and I always ask myself, what is the formula for prosperity through agriculture? So I want our participants to imagine a dollar sign in their mind, one big dollar sign. And in front of that dollar sign, you also imagine lots of naira, because $1 today is 500 naira, so that you can see the money in the mind. And as you are listening, imagine that you want that dollars in your pocket. What are the three areas that somebody needs to invest to bring the dollars into the pocket? And for me, if we're thinking about funding agriculture, either through portfolio investing or crowdfunding, we're thinking about really funding either the production bit of the puzzle, the investment bit of the puzzle, or the consumption bit. This is really the same formula that is behind the GDP of a country. And when you begin to look at it now, you begin to see why we should make certain choices regarding how we fund agriculture. And fortunately, Richard already mentioned some of these. Assuming I want to be a player in agriculture at the production layer, the worst thing to do is to try to fund that bit with crowdfunding, because people demand a return. And that return is not sure, because anything can happen from the time the farm is prepared to when seeds are planted to when harvest happens. And if things don't go well, you can't fulfill the promise. But the production is the foundation of all the wealth in agriculture. If people don't produce, we can't sell it, we can't process it, we can't market it, we can't even trade it on an exchange, as Richard has already mentioned. So for our participants, based on my careful observation, my view is that anybody that wants to play the production sector of agriculture, you really have to look at, portfolio investments, in my view, predominantly equity, like I said earlier, or low interest, long-term financing. The second bit of the puzzle is the investment bit. And when we talk about investment in agriculture, this is where in my own mind, I put in public investments and private investments. Public investments are everything that government does: roads, security, water, power. Private investments are the things that we private entrepreneurs do. We build the factories, we set up the warehouses, we buy the trucks to move the goods around. These investments are the things that translate what is produced into benefit for the ultimate consumer at the other end. And for me, the same principle also holds here. If one wants to play as an agribusiness person, and one wants to play at the part of agriculture that require significant investments, crowdfunding will not cut it. It's just going to be a real problem. And then the third bit is really the consumption bit. This is the bit where I call the services bit. That's where all of us are, because we buy food every day. So I put in my own mind everything that brings food to the table at this bit. And for me, this is the only place where crowdfunding adds any value. And even then, if you give people rates of return that doesn't make sense, it's not going to work. Because somebody can collect money from Mr. A, buy rice from Hillcrest in Kwara State, go and sell the rice in Lagos, make a little margin. If I do it well enough, I can generate enough to pay people off. So if the participant were to ask me, Bolaji, what would be your recommendation? I would simply say anybody that wants to fund an agribusiness must seriously consider portfolio investment. And the way I look at it is that, beyond what I've said, is that there's pure equity, money that we put into the business. There's quasi-equity. That's what I call grants. Grants from development partners, grants from governments. Then there are development loans. Everything that Richard already mentioned regarding Anchor Brewers and all the various programs. And then there are commercial bank loans. And then finally, there's crowdfunding. So in terms of financing an agribusiness, what are our choices? To me, crowdfunding should be the last option, because as we are seeing now, it doesn't really end well, and it's not easy to scale because millions of our farmers are struggling and are not wealthy. And my final point is really about innovations in bringing financing. For me, based on where I sit, I believe that in agriculture, one of the ways we can bring the benefit of crowdfunding and portfolio investing, equity or various forms of portfolio investing to play, is through blockchain technology. I'm totally convinced about that, because it allows us to do two things. It allows us to have the benefits of equity, and it allows us to have the benefits of crowdfunding together, and it allows us to also add patience to the equation. And that we can discuss in another forum when we get the chance to be invited to speak. So that's how I think about it. If you were to ask me in closing, I would say, can we make agriculture as big and as hot the way fintech is? For example, we all learned recently that Paystack, a company that is just 5 years old, was bought for $200 million. That is a huge amount of money. That company is almost bigger in valuation than some banks in Nigeria. And agriculture is even bigger than fintech. So can we do it? From where I sit, answer is yes. And if you were to ask me, this thing that you have said, how have you put it to work? In recent times, this my new company, Vorian Corelli, that everybody struggles to pronounce. That's how we financed it. We financed it primarily through equity. We put our own money on the table. And then we financed it through quasi-equity, money that development partners give us. Because we know that for the first 1 year to 18 months, just expect not to make a lot of money and expect to make a lot of mistakes. And everybody that puts in money should expect not to get anything out. But what it does is that it gives us peace of mind. And now the banks are coming in to say, let's join the platform. So what's my message in closing? My message is that if we do portfolio investing the right way and we sequence it properly into an agribusiness, it will allow us to achieve our goals as a country, especially as it pertains to the theme of industrializing Nigeria. So those are the few thoughts I would say. I wrote my thoughts down and it will be shared with the participants. Thank you very much, Benga. I hope I stayed within 10 minutes.
Yes, very wonderful, very practical, hands-on experience that you have shared there. It sort of connects with what Mr. Gundele had shared before. And we can see that there's positivity all over when it comes to agribusiness in Nigeria and crowdfunding and then portfolio investment. When you're thinking long-term, when you're taking patient capital, portfolio investment is key, especially in scaling up, because we really need to scale up. Thank you very much, very much. Before I go to the question and answer session, I would quickly like to respond to the invitation of our Excellency, the First Lady of Kwara State. I would have accepted your invitation, Mark. We'll find time to come and sit down with you to talk about how we can work together. Thank you very much. So that I don't miss that.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is solicitation.
Happy to receive you all.
Okay, ma. Okay, so we'll go into the question and answer session quickly on the patient capital as an alternative investment, as an alternative to crowdfunding. There are some things I picked from both speakers when they were delivering their speech. From Mr. Gundele, is that the idea that crowdfunding is not totally bad, so that we don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. So the question is, what can be done? What tweak can be done to crowdfunding model, okay, to make it work better for agribusiness, to make it more sustainable? We should be talking about sustainability. economic, social, and everything. So what can we do? What do you think, in your own opinion? That question is for Mr. Ogundele. Before I go to the floor to ask questions from our participants.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benga. For crowdfunding, they just need to do 2 to 3 simple things. The first thing is whoever is organizing or running any crowdfunding platform should strive very hard to understand the value chain they are playing in. From the evidence before us, it shows that most of them are not really very conversant with the value chains they are playing in. They are looking at the figures of the money, and they're not really doing the hard job. The second thing they need to tweak is what time do you really start your operation, and what time are you envisaging to hit the market? If the normal production season and cycle for a common crop like say rice is from X month to J month or Z month, and you want to do crowdfunding at the same time that every other person ordinarily does it, you have already planned to fail from the beginning, because there will be no competitive advantage of your output over theirs. Nigerians are price sensitive. So it simply means you need to alter your production time to hit the scarcity period such that the demand of your produce will be really high. The price you're going to get will be much higher because it's not available at that point in time. So your crowdfunding becomes a win-win for you. 2 things here: understand that value chain, and then change the timing of production to hit the market. And of course, the final thing they need to do is to improve on their logistics handling and routes to market. Once they get these 3 things done, crowdfunding still remains a good thing. But of course, for short-term smallholder operations, not for real scale and long-term. That's my solution to that.
Thank you very much, Ismail Gundele. Now, the next question will be for Mr. Akinboro. You have identified that when you want to scale or start a new agribusiness, it's better to go through portfolio investment, especially equity. Now, we're talking, and then Mr. Gundele also mentioned that portfolio investment is usually for large-scale businesses. So I want to, well, you know, the focus of Agike Foundation are the small, micro, small, medium agribusinesses. So how can, I'm directing this question to Mr. Bolaji, but if Mr. Gundele has ideas too, you can contribute within the limit of the time we have. So how can micro, small, especially micro and small agribusinesses that saw this crowdfunding platform as a savior, how can they now benefit from portfolio investments? How can it work for them? How can portfolio investment work for small, medium agribusinesses that most women and young people are involved in across Nigeria? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You see, Benga, this is the way I look at it. And I'll draw from experience living in villages in East Africa, in Malawi and Tanzania and all those places. Part of the reason why we have not been able to lift our rural people into the next level of economic empowerment is actually financial services. Because you see, what is the situation in a typical village? When a farmer has money, he has nowhere to keep it, so expenses. When he needs the money, he doesn't have the money. When he has the money, the inputs that he requires to pay for are not available there. So the whole cycle of prosperity for a smallholder farmer is not synced together properly. So you discover that many of the people that are in agriculture today at the production layer, if you look at it as a percentile, those that are new in farming, they are not even up to 10% of the total pool. Majority of people have been farming for close to 3, in the extreme 30 years plus. Are you with me? So you begin to ask yourself that every year they collect money. So why is it that they remain at the same level? You now begin to discover that, one, they don't have financial history. The financial history does not allow them to now have access to credit, to build a credit history. If you cannot build a credit history, you cannot even now begin now to now help these people package themselves as small businesses that are investable. Are you with me? That's why some of the ideas that are being pioneered in Nigeria are super important, like the National Collateral Register. Are you with me? You know, the idea of the NISA calls a particular idea, they call it, I think it is the virtual assets register, in which farmers are clustered together into contiguous land, and that land is now treated as a larger asset, and that entire holding is treated as an investable portfolio. So it is those kind of things that will lift the rural people out of poverty. So I think it's really two steps. And Mr. Godele kind of mentioned it a bit in his conversation, which is let's be able to deliver financial services to the rural areas. My view is that in Nigeria, we have to get village savings and loan associations working at scale. And they are very different from cooperatives. Very, very different in orientation. At least since I've been back in Nigeria 8 years now, I've not really seen anywhere that I can see village savings and loans associations are working the way they work in East Africa. I have not. And then the second bit is what Nestle is trying to do, which is now making these farmers contiguous. You understand what I mean? So that instead of treating one farmer as investable, because the landholding is very small, by the time you join 100 of them together now, you now have a larger asset. And that larger asset now, you can now repackage it. And we can now do interesting things around that. We can treat it as a virtual security. So many stuff that we can do to now lift them in mass out of poverty.
Thank
So
you
in closing,
very much,
yeah.
Okay. I think your point is taken. Okay, so
yeah, thanks.
Let them come together as a mass, as a formidable mass that can attract investment from PIs, portfolio investors. Thank you very much. Mr. Agundele, do you have any, just within a minute or two?
Yes, I have just something to say. I think on one hand, our farmers are hardworking, but on the other hand, they are full of some level of treachery that is not helping them. They are not sincere because from experience, as much as you're trying to help them, they always look for corners to cut. That's not helping the entire ecosystem. Now, the missing link here from what Bolaji and everybody is saying is that lack of support services, agro support services, which cuts across financial services, storage, logistics, and everything. Farmers need to be coordinated and organized. That is a business service on its own. Once that link is fixed, every other thing around smallholder farmers will be sorted out. That's what AFEX is doing and is getting it right. That's what you need to put in place for everything from the village to Lagos port to work. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much. And the final question before we open it up to, take questions from the audience. PI, portfolio investment, is not yet popular in Nigeria as crowdfunding platforms are. So what can we do as stakeholders to promote portfolio investment as an alternative to crowdfunding? What can we do as stakeholders to encourage and promote crowdfunding? Mr. Agundele first, under a minute or two, and then Mr. Akinboro.
Okay, thank you. The first thing we need to do is to let people understand that for portfolio investment, if you are not the patient type, don't even bother because your money will be tied down for 3 to 5 years. So we need to first understand who are these investors willing to put their money in that area. For those who go to treasury bills, bonds, the rest of them, they already know the tenure and they are used to it. But in this case, there are lots of variables that they just cannot control. They need to understand that part. So that sensitization needs to be done. And then the second thing will be, where do we identify, where can we find potential viable, scalable agribusiness investments that could be turned around to absorb portfolio investments? With those two things done, then we can begin to scale.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bolaji, sir?
I think I would just kind of complement what Richard has said. If you were to ask me, I would like to actually consciously promote a form of mass education in Nigeria on wealth creation. If you take a look at how they think in America and Latin America, everybody understands that the way you get rich is to invest in businesses, quickly scale it over a 3 to 5 year period, sell it, start another one. That cycle of entrepreneurship. Now that cycle now is really what creates this engine of continuous portfolio investment that allows people now to achieve what Richard has been talking about, patience. Because we've not created that cycle in Nigeria now, everybody now is thinking like hush puppy, quick wins, quick wins, quick wins, quick wins. So that will be my contribution. Mass education on how to create wealth. How do you really create wealth? That's what I was saying, Benga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bolaji and Mr. Gundele. So we go to the participant now. One of the questions there from, I guess, is a Miss Scholastica Uwagwe, is that I want to ask what plans we have for high post-harvest losses of agricultural commodities and inability or refusal of some organization to pay back loans that are advanced due to high post-harvest losses. Should we be considering warehousing agencies in the value chain? I don't know whether Mr. Ogudele would like to take the first shot, or Mr. Bolaji. Is the question clear enough? Can I get a feedback from
the question is not clear. It's not clear enough. I think.
Okay, I think. Okay, let me just not read. Let me paraphrase. I think what she's saying is that there are still high post-harvest losses.
Okay.
And because of this, farmers that have taken loans are unable to pay back. So she's asking, what can be the solution? What are the solutions that we feel that can be given to this? She's now saying, should we consider warehousing agencies in the value chain? I think for me, I think that is clear.
Okay.
Is this still not clear? Yeah.
It's better, and I think I get your point. Now, in Nigerian agriculture, we all know that with what we produce, we have high post-harvest losses. So we need to begin to look at how do we harvest, how do we handle, how do we package, store before it begins to get to the market. So the other aspect of low productivity is on one hand, but the critical thing that we face and see every day is that high post-harvest losses. So innovative methods of preserving what we have already produced out of the low productivity is the first thing we need to do. Yes, having warehouse agencies in the villages will help, because the easiest thing you easily observe in the villages is that there's no storage. Everything is done in the open air. At best, you find them under a shed or thatch or trees. So if you don't have any storage point, you really can't begin to add that value or anything you want to do. So yes, we need to have those warehouses in the villages, but most importantly, post-harvest loss reduction should be a focus for all the agricultural projects that we are engaged in.
Okay. Somebody is sharing an answer to tweaking of crowdfunding or how we can approach crowdfunding. Said crowdfunding can be used to finance working capital, while portfolio investment can finance both capital expenditure and operating expenses. That is working capital. So I think I believe you agree with this, or do you have any other contrary opinion?
No, they are quite different, because the dynamics
I don't agree.
Yeah, the dynamics of working with crowdfunding, they completely differ from the dynamics of working with portfolio investment. For portfolio investment, there are gamut of things you need to do, from the planning to the final execution and getting the return on that investment. For crowdfunding is much shorter. So maybe if you want to talk about working capital for something short, the timing of when you produce and get to the market is critical for crowdfunding operations. But for portfolio investments, it's a long-term vision. So they already have that scale all ahead of them, and they can weather a lot of the challenges ahead. So I think they should not mix those things up.
Okay.
Yeah, I fully agree with that submission.
Thank you very much. Okay, there is a question here. I think it's from somebody from outside Nigeria. I doubt if any of you can answer this satisfactorily, but he said, is Afex open to investors outside of Nigeria?
Yes, of course. Very, very open.
Okay.
I cannot speak to that.
Why not? It's online.
Ayo Balogun, I don't know if Ayo Balogun, Ayodeji Balogun is on.
Yeah.
At least I am on the
You will have to
platform.
speak for
I'm on the
sex. Yeah.
platform, and I can, if I travel out, I can see what's going on there. It's just a time difference thing. If you're in Europe or you're in America and you've already created a portfolio on that platform, it's just to wake up in the morning, what's the market by 10, 11, and by 3:30, what's the market by the close of the business that day. Are you selling or still waiting? It's simple. So why can't you do it if you're out of the country? There's nothing stopping you from doing it. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, actually, Helen from FX just sent a post that we want investors from outside of Nigeria. Put in your money.
Thank you very much. This other question, I think you have sort of looked at it in the first question and that I posed. However, I want us to look at it again. It said, how can small and medium agribusiness benefit from portfolio investment and equity funding? Mr. Balaji, do you want to take that? How can small and medium agribusiness benefit from portfolio and equity funding?
Yeah, I think we've already dealt with that. And I think the thing is really what we call small business or emerging businesses. I think the critical instrument is really, they need to just be very clear on their business plan. A lot of people want people to invest in them, but they don't have an idea of the destination. And all they are saying is that give me money, give me money, give me money. And nobody does that. So I think the best way to benefit from it is really to have a very clear plan. Where do we want to go? And then start, no matter how small. And then after that, look for people that are willing to join you on that journey. That's how I see it. But I speak purely from the point of an entrepreneur, which is, you put in your money first so that people can know that you have put your money at risk. And then people come to join you. That's been my own experience. I don't know whether Richard would like to contribute to that.
Well, in my opinion, I think we should first maintain the smallholder farmers the way they are. And one mistake we keep making is talking about this contiguous nature of trying to put them together. Land is immovable. So you have to work with the farmers where they are. But the ultimate solution to making the smallholder farmers more efficient and effective is in vertical integration. So we need to have big Voria Corali. This is the name of your company.
VC.
We need to have a lot of VCs, a lot of Babangona, a lot of all the others that are out there, even JMSF, to say, okay, we want to run a 10,000 hectare of X commodity. And that means individually we need, say, 5,000 or 10,000 farmers. Where are they? That entity that is overseeing everything will now vertically integrate those farmers. That is the investment they have to make. If the smallholder farmers are willing, ready to cooperate with these big boys, then their problems will be solved. Because all the investments, capital-wise, that need to be put in there will come from these guys up there, and they will just do their part, and they will still remain relevant to the sector.
Thank you very much. Mr. Agudele, there's a question that is asked pointedly from you. It said, does JMSF facilitate investments in agribusiness? Said, I ask because we run an aggregator and agribusiness support service blend in fruit and vegetable value chain, but funding has been a challenge despite the market opportunity.
Yes, we do. Like what Mr. Benga said, we will have to understand you. We don't know you. We don't have any track record of what you're doing. So we need to first understand, because if we begin to talk to potential investors to say, this is a viable investment, our social capital, our integrity is now at stake. If anything goes wrong, they will pick JMSF and say, you advised us to go there. So if we can talk after this, we'll see what best can be done for you.
Okay. Now, this one is for Mr. Akiboro. He said, what are the practical solutions to prevent farmers from being exploited? How can we reduce the difference and help farmers earn more? That's question one. There's another question after that. The second question from that same person, Mr. Jomo Eric, is what is the right place for individuals and small scale enterprise to invest in the value chain? Is it production or other aspect of the value chain?
Thank you very much. Mr. Jomo Eric is actually from Kenya. Yeah. And I hope it's the same Jomo. Yeah. So this question of farmers being exploited, from my own observation, is under the foundation is information asymmetry. Simply because the farmer is not aware of what is really going on. So between the farmer and the market is the middleman. So if we solve for that problem of information asymmetry, we reduce the level of exploitation. I think that's a major problem we need to solve. And then the second thing is access to markets at speed. Because when you go to a typical farmer market for grains, what you're going to discover is that the farmer can bring his grains there he wants to sell. There are not enough buyers on that day. He can't transport it back. He has to leave it with somebody. That leaving it with somebody creates those gaps for exploitation. So if we make our markets work properly, in whatever way we can, we kind of reduce that problem. So that's how I respond to the first question. Then can you repeat the second question again? Because I didn't really understand it very well.
He said the second question, what is the right, I think it means what is the right segment, or what is the right segment of the value chain for individuals and small enterprise to invest in agribusiness?
Oh, wow. That's a difficult one. I think Richard wants to respond to that.
I think, I've been faced with a lot of people asking me that same question. And the simplest thing to do is, you don't have the experience of production. You don't have the experience of that is working well for somebody who is new is FX. Put your money in one of those trading commodities and watch it grow. By the time you understand the sector or the system for maybe a year or two, then your interest to go into production, you might say, okay, let me try my hands. But for a startup, a new person, just go towards the trading part. From trading, you now begin to backwardly integrate till you come back to processing, and then the rest can follow. Don't start production immediately. You will fail. You will lose that money. And that's too hard a way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've said it all.
Okay. I think this other, I don't know if it's a question. It's not a question. It's an opinion from one of our participants, Mr. Oladumola. I can't see the name very well. Oladumola is saying you can't blame people for asking for quick returns on their investments, and it's not common to Nigeria alone. So the question, the rider I will put to that is that for agribusiness, is this something that a would-be or investor or a potential investor can expect quick returns all the time?
No.
Yeah.
That's just the answer.
In fact, for me, I don't even think it's the issue of quick returns. It is the quantum of the quick returns that's the problem. Because if I'm expecting quick return at a rate of, let's say, even 3% every 3 months, it's totally different from 40% every 3 months. So I think the expectation is not the speed, in my view. It is the size of the return that people expect that is creating the problems in the market. It's not the speed, it's the size. That jumbo
I saw one that said 42% in 12 weeks, and I was like, yeah, 42%. So what did you invest? How much are you selling? It's just not realistic.
Yeah.
And you are also greedy to put your money in such a fund.
In fact, that's the conversation I spent an hour on today. Somebody offering people 50% in 6 months on agri investments. So I'm wondering, what is the commodity?
What is the underlying biological assets? That's the question. What is the underlying biological assets? Okay, thank you very much, Saz. We still have a bit of time. So there's a question that I think this is when we started the discussion before we entered the main program on food prices. Somebody is concerned. He said, rising food prices, what is the exact cause and what's the way out? Can we answer that? Although it's out of the scope of our discussion, but
it's an elephant in the room.
Yes.
We have a combination of variables affecting and leading to that. The very first thing is the climate change issue. the seasons and the cycle, the rain is just not working the way people are used to it, because in our system in Nigeria, we are more rain-fed dependent, rainfall dependent than irrigation. So that's going to affect us. Then the second thing, which we all have to begin to factor into our production cost, is security. There's so much insecurity out there. The farmers that go to the fields now have reduced in number. The fields that are cultivated are the ones closer to their houses, not the ones far away from them. So with less number of people cultivating anything, with climate change and the flooding which we experienced this year, plus banditry and extortion of farmers, with the endemic problem of lack of infrastructure, roads, storage, and all of that, definitely we will have high food prices. And then COVID has come to add its own side to it. Then NSAS and we don't know what to come up to produce food. I pray that somehow we begin to look at other peri-urban methods of growing food. Maybe the soilless labs will begin to expand in production so that we can bridge that gap. But that's a whole long shot. That's a long time still ahead. But we just need to solve the problem of insecurity in Nigeria. It's affecting the entire ecosystem now.
In fact, what you said, Richard, is that part of the reason for rising food prices is what I will call the bandit tax. Because farmers now are paying a bandit tax, which is,
yes,
if you want to harvest, you must pay them 5,000 naira to go to your farm.
Consumer.
And the consumer has to pay. So in a way now, we now have another tax collector in the country, in the food production areas. That's really a major part of the problem.
You know, I want us to use this platform. Sorry, I also want us talking about this now. If briefly, I use this platform to educate some of our participants. You know, I've also been in the discussion about food prices, and somebody is saying, if we cannot produce, why can't we continue to import? Do you want to tell some of our participants that are listening the dangers of killing our own agricultural economy at the expense of importation? That's one. Two, one of the things that many of our people don't know also is that our source of revenue as a country is endangered. Many countries that are buying our crude oil before, they are set targets for eliminating fossil fuels.
Crude oil, yeah.
Crude oil, yeah. And if this is not there again, it means we don't even have, because crude oil sales is the major contributor to FX that we use to do imports. If we just open the tap for everybody to bring in anything, FX continues to rise. Please, can you, SARS, please use about 3 minutes of our time here to educate our people about the interplay of the forces and why we can't just open the floodgates for importation like that. Thank you.
I mean, it's a simple equation. Anytime you import, you're actually creating a job in another country. And it is time now for Nigerians to make Nigeria great again. I mean, the Americans have MAGA, which I call our own NAGA. Mana, make Nigeria great, or make Nigeria great again. You know, so we just have got to produce locally, very, very, extremely super important, and sort out our internal issues. And then we need to prepare for the future. Agriculture is the foundation of many other industries. If you are making cars, you need rubber to make tires. So if we grow it, you know, agriculture is also the foundation of pharmaceuticals, because most drugs come from plants. And today is now when drugs are coming from genes. You know, so either way, we just got to get serious with our agriculture. That's what I would say. And now on over to Richard.
Okay, let me use our ECOWAS region as an example. ECOWAS for a population has about 357 or 360 million. And Nigeria has 57% of that population. Now, most of the ECOWAS countries, apart from Gambia, Ghana, the rest of them are French speaking, which means they have import relationships with a lot of European countries, especially France and the rest of them. So with the current ECOWAS ETLS, it means if Nigeria does not control its borders, we are the market. We have a population of over 200 million, and we have a population of from that 200 million, about 60% or 65% of our population, they are youth. So the consumption is really, really high, and they must be fed. If we are not able to produce locally, internally to feed these people, then it means we have to import. And we were importing recklessly, even toothpick we were importing. But now with the borders closed, all the companies like Friesland Campina that have been in Nigeria for 60 years importing milk powder, what stopped them from producing that milk powder in this country? So if this government had not shut the border, they would not be thinking of going to Kaduna to start a project. Allah Foods would not be going to Kaduna to start up their own farms. Now, tomato, Benin Republic is the third largest importer of tomato. Benin Republic next door. What is Benin Republic's population compared to Nigeria? It's not even up to Agege in Lagos. Meanwhile, if you go there in the morning, you will see everything imported into Benin. By evening, you will see activity. Everything is entering into Nigeria. So how will Dangote factory thrive? How will Erisco thrive? How will GB Foods thrive if we do not control our borders so that the farmers who grow these same crops can have market uptake? Then everything we are doing is a waste. So we need to also grow our own food. That way we can have something to negotiate. A lot of the exports that Ghana, Togo, and Co do to Europe and other countries, those raw materials come from Nigeria via the borders. They sneak and they slip into those places. So if we begin to say, no, let us also get our own things right. Yes, it's going to be a little bit tough. It's going to be painful, but once we get past that point, we'll begin to smile. I'm not saying they should close the border forever, but at some point, this has to be sorted out.
Okay, thank you very much, Saz. There are a number of questions. I think this will be the last question, but I think several people asked it, so I don't want to ignore it. The question is about getting funding for startups in agribusiness. Whether there are funding sources that either of you can share on the platform for people who want to start agribusinesses. I guess most of them are youth, and the lady Aisha Suleiman and the Lubenga and the others. So please address this question so that they can be happy that they have attended this webinar. Thank you.
When it comes to startups, unfortunately in Nigeria, no bank will fund a startup and no agency out there is looking at startups. But of course, the challenge to that is, why don't we begin to think of volunteering? Why don't we begin to think of mentoring so that you go to a farm, learn something, and from there, you can put your ideas and plans together. And then you, from your own little, whatever savings you can get, start from the smallest point and begin to do something. I think the challenge is that we want to just get out there and begin to do things. It takes a little child. The first thing to do is to crawl, then you stand and begin to walk. Let's be patient. So let's learn these things first. Go to where you can volunteer. Right now in Abeokuta in Ogun State, the Epipsia greenhouse program I talked about, they have what they call learn for free. And the only way what you used to pay for what you gain is the work you do on the farm. And as they sell, there's some element of shares that come to you. Whatever you can save in 6 months or 1 year, then you can go start your own thing. So if people can begin to create some form of mentorship, should I call it like IT training before you start, it might help the startups. Because like Bolaji said, they don't have a business plan. They don't understand where they want to go to. They just say, okay, I want to do this thing. If I ask you 1, 2, 3 questions, you can't answer and I won't give you my money. So let's try to think of it from that angle. That's what Tony Lumelu is trying to do, trying to help people to understand business principles first before they get things.
All right. Thank you very much, Saz. We still have a bit of time. Let's still use it to answer 1 or 2 other questions. There's a question.
Commissioner is eager to give his speech. I can see him on Mr. Morita Lolarewaju.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we are done then, and we want to thank everyone that has attended this session and everyone that has asked one question or the other. We want to most especially thank our lead speakers, Mr. Ogundele and Mr. Akiboro, for their time and for the exposition that they have given between the two of them on portfolio investment as an alternative, patient alternative to crowdfunding. Without much ado, I'll hand over back to Mrs. Aquabio to continue, and then we'll go to the next session of the program. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending this session. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gbenga Adelano. That was wonderful moderation on your part. You were able to get us to enjoy the sessions, the presentations, and the responses to the questions. I know participants still have a lot of questions that they want to ask, but I also know that what they've gotten at the moment has been very, very juicy. I have in the house the Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, Kwara State, Nigeria, Alhaji Moritala Olariwaju. Alhaji Olariwaju, you're welcome, sir. He'll be giving us the vote of thanks for the day one of this 3-day webinar. As soon as Alhaji is done, I'll be back to also close the session for today. Welcome, sir. Alhaji, can you unmute, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello?
can hear you, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Dr. Mrs. Olufolake Abdrazak, the founder, Agriculture People Support Center, all other participants in this program, I say good evening. I believe all of us have participated very well in today's event. It is my great pleasure that we have fruitful discussion despite the short duration of the program. I hope today's program will be an eye-opener to all the participants and will be investors in the area of portfolio investment and opportunity embedded in crowdfunding. However, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to recognize the effort of our speakers. One, especially Mr. Richard Ogundele, Mr. Bolaji Akiboro, and most importantly, our moderator, Mr. Gbenga Adelano. I thank them so much for their effort and wish them more successes in their endeavor. Thank you very much. May God bless you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
That was the Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, Kwara State, Alhaji Moritala Olariwaju. Thank you very much for the encouragement, sir. Want to thank Her Excellency, Dr. Mrs. Olufolake Abdrazak, the First Lady of Kwara State, Nigeria, and also the power behind the Ajike People Support Center. Her Excellency's words at the beginning of this program was very, very inspiring. And she told us a whole lot about what is happening in Kwara State. I want to join Mr. Gbenga Adelano to accept the invitation to Kwara State. We are all coming there so that we'll all see with one eye. Richard Ogundele will be there, Mr. Bolaji Akimboro will be there, Victoria will be there, I will be there by the grace of God, and Mr. Gbenga Adelano will not be missing. So we'll be there to see firsthand all that Her Excellency has told us about. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you so much for putting this webinar together. Ajike People Support Center, your support has been amazing, simply amazing. And we've had a very wonderful session. We will post the link for the recording of this session, the day one of the 3-day webinar, the African Farmers Stories and Ajike Support Center, the need for patient capital. So we'll post a link so you can watch on our Facebook page. Tomorrow is day 2. It's always better, it gets better and better and better. We'll also have an array of expert speakers, and they will be delivering on the subjects for tomorrow. The same time, 4 p.m., and the link also is the same. So please, let's not, we pray we don't have the kind of problems we had today for those who joined in late. There were a lot of network issues from what we heard from the chat box. But tomorrow, 4 p.m., we'll be here again for another 1.5 hours together, and it will be a very, very much fun time. We've learned so much today. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Good night.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a great weekend.